Okay. Namaste and welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and our class on the Bhagavad Gita. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Amba Tvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Vasudeva Sutan Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. Om, O Mother Bhagavad Gita, we meditate on you who were made known to Partha by the Lord Narayana himself, you who were included in the Mahabharata by the great sage Vyasa, you the goddess who rains down the nectar of Advaita, non-dualism, in 18 chapters, you the destroyer of relative existence. We worship Krishna, world teacher, son of Vasudeva, the supreme delight of Devaki, his mother, and the slayer of the demons Kamsa and Chanur. We adore that supremely blissful Madhava, by whose grace the mute are made eloquent and the lame are made to cross over mountains. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. Now, before I begin, since we are still experimenting with a new sound system, let me ask Surenji, did you turn on the recording? The circle. Okay, good. Okay, whatever you think is best. Whatever you think is best. So, we are studying chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita. This is the chapter called the chapter on the Kshetra Kshetrajna, the chapter on the field and the knower of the field. So we began that last time with Sri Krishna's defining the field and the knower of the field to Arjuna. So what is the field? The field means everything that we experience in all realms of experience, in the waking state, dream state, deep sleep state, in the ordinary state of ignorance, even in a vision of gods and goddesses. All of that, whatever we see is within the field. It doesn't mean that gods and goddesses are part of the field. They are the knower of all of the fields. But our experience of them is, until we are identified with them, is part of the field. So again, it doesn't mean that the deity, that God is the field, no. But everything that can be objectively experienced is part of the field. So this is part of the field, this is part of the field. All of this is part of the field. The dream world that I experience is part of the field. Deep sleep, when I just see nothing but blackness, nothing but the cloud of ignorance, that is part of the field. My thoughts are part of the field. My emotions are part of the field. Everything that I experience is part of the field. And the knower of the field, Kshetrajna in Sanskrit, in the terminology of the Gita, Kshetrajna, the knower of the field, literally, is the self. And then Sri Krishna tells us in this chapter, verses we went over last time, he says that I, Sri Krishna, meaning I, the Lord, I, Ishvara, I, Prabhu, I, God, the supreme deity, I am the knower of all fields. So what does that mean? I know this field of my world of experience. You know your world of experience. Everyone knows their own individual world of experience, the universe of your experience. Even if you look through telescopes at different distant galaxies, those are fields that you know. But God is the knower of all fields, because God is the the soul of all souls, seated in the hearts of all, experiencing the experiences of everyone. So that's why, again, as I often refer to this, Sri Ramakrishna said that God hears even the footfall of an ant. How does God hear it? Is God, the ant is walking here and God is nearby with very strong ears listening to the ant and hearing the footfall because his ears are so good? No, it's because God is within the ant as the inner consciousness, experiencing everything that the ant experiences, everything that the ground experiences, everything that the earth experiences, everything that the sun experiences, everything that trees experience, animals, plants, insects, everything. God is the internal consciousness within everything, experiencing everything simultaneously. And so, as I said, when we studied chapter 11 on the universal vision the vision of the universal form of Sri Krishna, that is unimaginable to us. We have a hard enough time even understanding our individual world of experience. And to understand a consciousness which is aware of all experiences in the whole universe, not just on this earth, but if there are worlds, planets with other life forms experiencing things, that also, God experiences everything throughout the universe from the inside. That we can't even imagine. And that's why the vision that Arjuna had of Sri Krishna's universal form was terrifying to him because it was completely befuddling. The mind can't comprehend it. So we've got the kshetra, the field of experience. We have the kshetrajna, the knower of the field. I, the self. I, the consciousness within this, identified with this body. And then God, who is the universal consciousness experiencing through all minds. And then, of course, beyond all of that, you have Brahman. And so we are one with God through our identity with Brahman, because we are Brahman itself. So now we come to verse 7, and this begins a series of 5 verses, 7 through 11, 5 verses that talk about the qualities of a true knower, one who knows the truth. So, as often we have to do in Sanskrit, let us begin at the end of verse 11 and then work backwards to these other verses. So, the very end of verse 11 says, Etad jnanam iti proktam ajnanam yad ato nyatha. That means, Etad jnanam iti proktam. This, which he's going to describe in these 5 verses, these qualities which he's going to describe, indicate true knowledge. These are said to be knowledge. That is, they're said to be knowledge by the wise. They're said to be knowledge by the scriptures and by sages, by the wise. Ajnanam yad ataha anyatha. And ignorance is that which is opposed to these qualities he's going to name. So again, we're going to start with verse 7 now. And it's a list of qualities. But those qualities, again, we have remember while we're going through them, these are the characteristics of knowledge. And ignorance, that which we suffer from, cosmic ignorance, is that which is opposed to these qualities that he's going to enumerate. So that's the context. So now we begin with verse 7, which says, Amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsa kshantirarjavam acharyopasanam shaucham stairyam atmavinigraha. So this is just a list of qualities. So let's see what they are. Amanitvam, that means humility. Literally, it means non-pride, the absence of pride. And so, of course, the absence of pride means humility. Mana means a prideful self-awareness. I am so-and-so. And I am the owner of this property. I'm a man of substance. People should listen to me. So that sort of egotism, that being full of oneself, that is manitvam. And so this is amanitvam. So knowledge is characterized by humility. There's a famous verse, a Sanskrit verse, which is often quoted, which says, Vidya dadati vinayam. Vidya dadati vinayam. Vidya, knowledge, gives humility. That is, a person of true knowledge is a person of humility, a man or woman of humility. Why? Because if we have true understanding, then we know how insignificant we as individuals are. A person who has a little bit of education, then they can become puffed up with the pride of their knowing something, because they're comparing themselves to other people who haven't been educated. And oftentimes such people think that they are the best educated people, who know more than anybody else on various subjects. But a person who really knows how they see knowledge everywhere, and they see that everyone is the same reality. And so how can I be puffed up with knowledge when I see greatness everywhere? I see knowledge everywhere. I see only knowledge. I don't see smallness. I don't see lowness. I see greatness everywhere, because I see the same divine being pervading all. And so true knowledge gives humility. So vidya dadati vinayam. You'll find that in some of our Ramakrishna mission schools, put into the walls, carved into the walls of the school building sometimes. Vidya dadati vinayam. Knowledge gives humility. And of course, there, knowledge means wisdom, not just knowing a lot of things, because people who know a lot of things can be full of pride. But true knowledge, which is true wisdom, gives humility. So amanitvam, adambhitvam. That's an associated idea. Dambha means showing one's greatness. It means being pretentious show of one's importance. And so adambhitvam means non-pretentiousness, lack of pretentiousness, unpretentious. So the person of wisdom is characterized by non-pretentiousness. Why? Because they have known, again, the reality which is manifested everywhere, and that is infinite, and that is all pervading. And so there's no sense that this person is important, because the reality is infinite. It's non-dual, it's everywhere. So who am I as this individual person to be pretentious? So the person of wisdom is non-pretentious, unpretentious. So humble, non-pretentious. And then ahimsa, characterized by non-injury towards all. Why non-injury towards all? Because if you see yourself in all, you recognize that by injuring another, I'm injuring myself. So all aggression goes out of such a person. All feeling of aggression, all desire to injure another person, that is destroyed in the person. So the person is full of ahimsa, kshanti with a K. It's like shanti, which means peace, but kshanti with a KSH, that means forbearance. So such a person becomes forbearing. Forbearance includes the virtue of patience. So forbearance means that socially forbearing as well as physically forbearing. Sri Krishna says in verse 14 of chapter 2 in the Gita, he says, Matras parashastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agamapayino nityas tanstitiksha swabharata. That the contact of the senses with the objects of the world, they produce pleasure and pain, heat and cold, other pairs of opposites. They only last for a moment. So learn to bear with them. That is, be patient with them. Don't be disturbed by the experiences of the world, because every experience is only temporary. Even a lifelong experience in the view of eternity becomes momentary. And so, again, that's not something you tell somebody else, that you should be patient because even your whole lifetime of misery is nothing in eternity. Well, no, that you don't tell to. That's not for telling other people. That's for telling yourself that let me bear with all of my experiences because these are just momentary and they come merely from the contact of the senses with the objects. But I am consciousness itself. I'm aware of that, but that's not who I am. And so gradually I can learn to withdraw myself from those experiences. That's a very high state, but it is possible for all of us. And so kshanti, forbearance, and social forbearance also, that is insult and injury from other people, that we have to learn forbearance for that also. People say mean things to us, people criticize us, people misunderstand us and so forth. That we have to learn patience with that as well. Again, as I often say, that doesn't mean making yourself an object of abuse and so forth, but it does mean that no matter how you try to explain yourself to people, some people want to misunderstand you and you can't do anything about it. So let it go, let it go. I knew a devotee, an American devotee named Prasanna. Her birth name was Catherine Whitmarsh. She was the niece of Josephine MacLeod, the great Josephine MacLeod, devotee of Swami Vivekananda. So she used to tell me, I used to go to see her when I would go up to speak in Santa Barbara at the temple there. And I would go across the street from the convent to see her and have tea with her and talk. And so she told me many times about Josephine MacLeod. And one of the stories she would often tell was about how forbearing Josephine MacLeod was. Josephine MacLeod, when she became older, she became somewhat peculiar as far as in the eyes of other people. She was really living in the state of a Paramahamsa, of a realized soul, and didn't care about other people's opinions. And so that made sometimes her behavior a little peculiar. Not harmful, not crazy, nothing like that, but peculiar. And so people would comment, people would snicker, people would make comments, and sometimes within the hearing of Josephine and Prasanna. And Josephine would say, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. She would see that Catherine, her niece, was getting upset. And so she would say it doesn't matter, doesn't matter, let it go, let it go. Because she had become full of patience, full of forbearance. And so that is another quality of knowledge, kshanti. And then arjavam, straightforwardness. Arjavam means lack of crookedness, straightforwardness. So a person of knowledge becomes straightforward. Why? Because they have nothing to hide, nothing to hide. Swami Vivekananda used to say to his monks, he would say, even if you do something wrong, do it publicly. Do it publicly. If you do something wrong, then don't try to hide it. Do it publicly. That is because he wanted that people to develop that quality of straightforwardness, not hiding, not deceiving, not trying to pretend, and so forth. So Arajavam is something very necessary in spiritual life. Sri Ramakrishna used to especially admire that quality of Arajavam, of sincerity. And of it's also known by the term of saralata, term that's used in Bengali also, a Sanskrit term used in Bengali. I don't know about other Sanskritic languages, but saral, that is someone who is simple as a child. So simple means that there's no effort to deceive, no effort to hide something. Everything is just out front. So arjavam. Acharyopasamam, and that means service to the teacher. So characterized by service to the teacher. Acharya upasam. I'm sorry, upasanam. Acharyopasanam. Service to the teacher. So if we have learned wisdom from a great teacher, not from those of us who just stand up and give lectures, but if we have learned wisdom from a great soul, from a great teacher, then we recognize that we have received something of priceless value. And so we want to serve them in recognition of that. And then shaucham. Shaucham means cleanliness. Shakespeare famously says that cleanliness is next to godliness. And so that is the Hindu idea, that cleanliness is next to godliness. No, there are other qualities which are certainly much more important than cleanliness. But as Swami Vivekananda says in Raja Yoga, you can't be a yogi unless you're clean, unless you have clean habits. And so cleanliness. There are, of course, purity and things like that are necessary also. Those are even more important. But just plain ordinary cleanliness, that also is important, because that physical habit of cleanliness, what does it do? As Patanjali says in the Yoga Sutras, it leads to disgust with the body. If we are always dirty and we get used to being dirty, we don't bathe regularly, we don't change our clothes regularly, we get used to being dirty, then the dirtiness of the body doesn't bother us because it's what we're used to. But if we have a habit of cleanliness, then we begin to see that the body by its very nature is always, you're constantly having to clean the body. And so a sense of disgust with physicality that comes. It doesn't mean being what they call a shuchibai in Bengali, that is having a washing mania or something like that, or a purity complex or anything like that. It just means in a normal way, maintaining clean habits. So again, everything can be exaggerated to the point where it becomes something harmful. So when we talk about these qualities, we're talking about them in a healthy way. For instance, humility can become a harmful property if we take humility to mean I'm just a worm, I'm no good, I'm awful, I'm a bad person. No, that's not humility. Humility means the absence of a sense of self-importance. It doesn't mean self-hatred. So again, remember that always with all spiritual qualities, that you can take a spiritual quality and misinterpret it. But that's the problem of misinterpretation. It's not a problem of the quality itself. So shocham. And then styrium. Styrium means the quality of being steady. So it means steadiness or perseverance. That is, I've decided to do this, and so I'm going to continue with it. I've decided to take up the spiritual life, and so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go forward. Obstacles will come, problems will come, but I will be unperturbed. I'm going to develop the quality of styrium, the quality of steadiness in the midst of the process, which translates also as perseverance. And then Atma vinigraha, that means self-control, self-control. For us, all of these things are practices, so including self-control. Self-control here means control of the sense organs, the motor organs, sense organs, motor organs, and the mind. Sense organs, organs of action or motor organs, and the mind, control of all of those. So for us, that is work. We have to work to control the senses. The senses want to go. The hand wants to grab. It wants to touch everything. The eyes want to see. The ears want to hear everything. If we hear somebody talking in the next room, we want to go up to the wall to hear what they're saying. Do we need to? No, it's just out of idle curiosity, because the ear drags us to the wall to listen to what somebody else is saying. And so that learning to control the senses, the sense organs, the organs of knowledge, and also the motor organs, and the mind. That is self-control. So the running translation of this whole verse is humility, unpretentiousness, non-injury, forbearance, sincerity, service of the teacher, cleanliness, persistence, control of the body and organs. Then we go to verse 8. Indriyarteshu vairagyam anahankara eva cha janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanudarshanam. So indriyarteshu vairagyam, dispassion towards the objects of the senses. Dispassion towards the objects of the senses. Vairagya is sometimes translated as renunciation, but renunciation really is tyaga. Vairagya means viraga, without passion. So dispassion towards the objects of the senses. So that's something that we have to learn. That's something we have to practice. For the person of wisdom, the man or woman of attainment, vairagya is spontaneous. There's no effort whatsoever, because they have attained to something which is so transcendently superior that there's no way that they could be interested in anything here. But for us, it's a practice. We keep reminding ourselves that these things are not worth it. These things are not worth it. So don't spend time thinking about them. Don't spend time worrying about them. Try to put the mind towards God. Indriyartesha vairagyam anahankara evacha, and the absence of ego, the absence of egotism. So before we had the absence of pride, but here is the absence of pretentiousness and the absence of pride or humility. Here the absence of egotism is, and let me first say that in the interpretation of Hindu scriptural texts, it's a basic principle that if something seems to be repeated twice within an instruction, then it's up to us to find a distinction between the two uses of the basic idea, because it would not have been mentioned twice without there an intention in using the two terms in some particular in different ways, and so. The lack of pride, the sense of humility is one thing, but egotism includes the sense of this is my body, this is my mind, these are my things, this is my house, this is my property, this is my car, and so forth. So losing that sense of identification with everything. The person of wisdom no longer thinks of me and mine. Me and mine. So pride is a different thing. Pride is, well, you know what pride is. And then anahankara, the absence of egotism. Then the last line is all one thing, or it all refers to, it's a complex thought, of course, because there are a number of words in here, but they're all tied together. Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi, dukkha, doshanudarshanam. So anudarshanam means seeing again and again, clearly thinking about, clearly understanding the dukkha dosha, and let me say that there are three different ways of interpreting these words, but we'll just take one because it comes to the same thing anyway. So dukkha dosha, the flaw of misery, which is found in janma, that is birth, mrityu, which is death, jara, which is old age, and vyadhi, which is illness. So these are all considered to be ills that we are afflicted with. So yes, janma, birth, is considered to be an ill. Birth is an ill because we weren't asked to, if we wanted to be born and given an option, we find ourselves born. And though the birth of a child is a wonderful event, something to be celebrated by parents and friends of the family and so forth. Truly, for us who are born, how do we come into the world? We come into the world crying. And unfortunately, many leave the world crying as well. And so birth is considered to be an ill because we are forced to be born. We come into birth not because we want to, but because we're forced into birth. And so birth, death, of course, is recognized by many as something which is unwanted. Birth, death, old age, and the pains and the sufferings of old age, and sickness, all of these things. So the person of wisdom sees again and again, is fully aware, is continuously aware of the ills of birth, death, old age, sickness, etc. So, and diseases. So this running translation goes, non-attachment with regard to objects of the senses, that is dispassion with regard to the objects of the senses, and also the absence of egotism, and thinking again and again about birth, death, old age, diseases, and the defects and miseries of birth. So he gives another, in fact, in his commentary, Madhusudana gives three different interpretations of this phrase. So he gives a different interpretation from that which I did. He takes dosha and dukkha, the last two words in that long string before the word meaning reflecting on. He takes those also as things which are thought about. But another meaning is the one that I gave, that the thinking about the misery, the flaw of misery involved in birth, death, old age, and sickness. So, and all three of the interpretations, they basically come to the same thing. So that's why we only need to take one interpretation. So verse 9 continues the thought. Asaktir anabhishwanga putra dara grihadishu nityam cha samachittatvam ishta nishtopapattishu. So this says asakti, that is non-attachment. So wisdom means non-attachment. Non-attachment is spontaneous in the man or woman of attainment, the man or woman of knowledge. Because what are they going to attach themselves to? Why would they attach themselves to little things here when they have realized themselves to be the infinite, completely fulfilled, eternally fulfilled, apta kama, having attained the object of infinite desire, that is realization. So they're naturally asakta. So asakti, non-attachment, is spontaneous to them. Abhishwanga, the absence of fondness for putra, dara, griha, adi. The absence of fondness for son, wife, and house. And of course, that includes husband for the wife. So the absence of fondness for the usual sources of the greatest attachment. That is the attachment to children, the attachment to spouse, and the attachment to property. Those are the greatest attachments that we have. And so the person of wisdom has overcome attachment to all of these. So that sounds scary to most people because it sounds impossible. How are you going to be unattached to your own children? How are you going to be unattached to your own spouse, to your own home and property and so forth? So this, again, remember, this is something that comes with attainment, which comes with realization. It doesn't come just because you tell yourself to be without fondness for all of these things. But as a practice, what we want to do is to simplify our attachments, not to emphasize them. The problem is for many of us, the problem is that society has told us from our childhood, from our earliest childhood, society has told us, parents, friends, school, the media, everything tells us that these are the things that are most important in life. children, the spouse and family, property, possessions. Those are the things of greatest attainment. Those are the end all and be all of life. And so that has gone deeply into our system, not from this life, but from previous lifetimes as well. And so that type of non-attachment, that type of grand non-attachment, that only comes at a very high state. So this is not what you start with, that, okay, I'm not going to be fond of my children or my spouse anymore. I'm not going to care about my house. Let it burn down. Who cares? No, you don't start with that. You do other things. And gradually you find that these things begin to lessen. So always remember that there are entry points in the spiritual life, and then there are places where there's not a good entry point. So you start with the entry points, qualities that you can practice, and other things like this. Fondness for the most dear things in life, that will go when we attain to a high level of wisdom. But it's important to know that that is where we are headed, so that we don't fall into that trap of thinking that I should be fond of all of these things. No. Again, let me state another problem with trying to practice that is that if you try to practice it, then you will lose, or for some, for many it's not possible, but for some, you would lose the fondness for your children in the wrong way. That is, you just don't care. Let them go. Who cares? Who cares? I don't care about children. Get them out of my sight. I don't want them. So you lose that fondness in the wrong way. What you want is love for all beings. And so you have the same love for others that you have for your children. So it's not a question of who cares about them. I don't like my wife anyway. I can't stand my husband anyway. No, it doesn't mean that. So this is not a place for direct practice. It's a place or a quality that manifests when you work on other things. And then as you find that wisdom is dawning within you, naturally these things fall away. So asakti anabhishwanga putra dara griharishu, then nityam cha samachittatvam ishtanishtopapatishu. So this, the second line of the verse, the 2 feet in the second line, all are one statement. And that means samachittatvam, that is same equanimity is the best way to put it, but same-mindedness is what it literally means, same-mindedness, but it means equanimity, nityam, continuous equanimity, ishtanishtopapatishu, in the acquisition of, in the experiencing or the acquisition or getting the desirable and the undesirable. Ishta, anishta, ishta, anishta. The ishta, the desirable, anishta, the undesirable. Upapatti, the getting, the acquiring, the having the experience of the desirable and the undesirable. So, putting all of that together, it means equanimity, continual equanimity in the midst of the experience of the desirable and the undesirable. Experiences are always coming to us. Some of them are things that we want, we welcome. Other things are unwelcome. But the person of knowledge maintains equanimity in the face of all experiences. So that is something that we can work towards. To attain it is the same as attaining realization. But we can begin to work towards it. That is, by a firm determination, let me not be disturbed by anything. Let me remind myself over and over. And I fail, I get disturbed by something. Let me again remind myself, no, don't get disturbed by anything. And with time, we begin to see, even though we still have lapses, we begin to see that we're beginning to attain an equanimity in the midst of experiences. Yes, lapses are there, but it takes more to make us lapse. And when we lapse, we recover much more quickly. So this is something to practice. Equanimity in the midst of all experiences. Recognizing that I can't control the experiences that come to me. Those have been set up by my past karma. They're going to come whether I want them or not. So the experiences that come to me, let me meet them with equanimity of mind. I can't run from them. I can't hide from them. They're going to come. So let me at least meet them with equanimity, realizing that all experiences eventually become the same. And so let me take that standpoint as far as I can in practice now. So then we come to verse 10, which says, Maya chananya yogena bhaktiravyabhicharini vivikta desha sevitvam aratir janasamsadi. Maya cha ananya yogena bhakti avyabhicharini. So this is all one thing, this first line of 2 feet, that bhakti, devotion, avyabhicharini, unwavering, avyabhicharini, unmoving, unwavering devotion, mai, for me, unwavering devotion for me, ananya yogena, with concentration of mind. With here he has single-minded concentration, ananya yogena, with concentration which is not in anything else. So a single-minded concentration, unwavering devotion to me with single-minded concentration. And then vivikta desha sevitvam aratir janasamsadi. So this is vivikta desha sevitvam, the inclination to go to a solitary place, vivikta desha, a place that's set aside, a place that is distinguished, that is separate from other people. Arati janasamsadi. And a lack of delight in the company of people. So a person of wisdom retires to a place that is separate and devoid of human company, because the person of wisdom delights in is an Atmarati or Atmarata, one who delights in the self, and so they don't seek out the company of others because they don't need it. They have realized the one reality, and they are satisfied within themselves. So the running translation goes, unwavering devotion to me with single-minded concentration, the first line, and then inclination to repair into a clean place, lack of delight in a crowd of people. So that is verse 10. And then we'll take one more verse for tonight, because this concludes the 5 verses of these qualities. Adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam etad jnanamiti proktam ajnanam yadato nyatha. Adhyatma jnana nityatvam. So nityatvam, steadfastness in atma jnana, in self-knowledge, steadfastness in self-knowledge, tattva jnana artha darshanam, understanding the value, artha, tattva jnana, artha, the value, artha, of tattva jnana, the knowledge of truth. Or here he interprets it a little differently. What I said is one interpretation, but let us go with his, because that is a little better. Tattva jnana artha darshanam. Darshanam means the contemplation on the purpose, artha, contemplation on the purpose, artha, of tattva jnana, of the experience of reality. So either way, it makes a good meaning. but since I read the English here, I'll use his interpretation. So contemplation on the purpose of the experience of reality. Uh, Actually, let me say I like my first interpretation better, because we're talking about the signs of a person of knowledge. And so the person who has knowledge doesn't have to think about the purpose of the knowledge of truth, but they uh, they don't contemplate that, but they know the purpose of Tattva-jnana. That is, they know that that is the highest purpose, that the purpose of life is the knowledge of truth, so that they are full of the awareness of the highest purpose of life, which is the knowledge of truth. So, and then the last line says what we said already at the beginning of this class: Etad jnanam iti proktam ajnanam yad ataha anyatha. So this which we have described is known as knowledge. What I, Sri Krishna, have described in these verses is known as knowledge, and ignorance, ajnanam, ignorance, is that which is otherwise. So ignorance is other than these qualities that I have described. And so, of course, that we can see the truth of that, that we don't have these qualities in any special degree yet. We're striving for them, but they are as yet absent, at least in their perfection. We're trying for them. And so, and before we started on the spiritual path, then we were far from these qualities. So, these are the qualities of knowledge, and the qualities of ignorance are the absence of all of these qualities. So the pride, pretentiousness, egotism, the crookedness, etc., those are all signs of ignorance, whereas these are signs of knowledge. So the purpose of a list like this is to give us something to work towards. What do we do with these qualities listed in these 5 verses? I believe that there are 20 different qualities which are named here. I'm not going to stop and count them now, but I believe that there are around 20. We came to a similar list in chapter 12 in Bhakti Yoga, the qualities of a true devotee. And there they were somewhat different, but they were consistent with these, but a different list. And so, as a Swami told me many years ago about these 2 lists in the Gita, you can't keep all of these things in mind. You can't go around thinking, well, let's see, am I doing this? And am I doing that? Am I doing that? Am I doing that? Am I doing that? And go through 20 different things. And then when you get to the list in chapter 12 on the qualities of an accomplished devotee, there's something like there are more than 30 different qualities. So how can you keep all of these things in mind? You don't need to keep all of them in mind. Once in a while, you can contemplate on each one of them if you like, but keep 2 or 3 qualities in mind as those that you want to practice especially. Keep even one. Even one is enough, but at the most 2 or 3, make them your special dedication, that these are things that I want to attain because I understand them, I understand the value, I can see their value to me in my spiritual life. And so I want to try to practice these. And that is enough. Why? Because all of these are connected. If you get one in its fullness, you have all of the others. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that Girish Ghosh was saved by his devotion to truthfulness alone. That Girish was a person who had so many flaws and did so many terrible things in his life before he came to Sri Ramakrishna, and even during the time he was associating with Sri Ramakrishna, until he became very saintly through the influence of Sri Ramakrishna. But Sri Ramakrishna said he was saved by his devotion to truthfulness alone. Girish Ghosh didn't have these other qualities, but he was truthful. And once he told Sri Ramakrishna that I surrender to you, I give you my power of attorney, then he was a man of his word. And so that was enough to save him. And so if we take up one quality, two qualities, three qualities, then that's enough, because all of these qualities are tied together. As I said, when we went over the qualities of a devotee, that for a person of realization, these qualities are spontaneously manifested. If you attain to illumination, then none of these have to be worked for. They all come to you. And until illumination, we can't have any of these perfected. We can work at perfecting them. We can get better and better at them, but they don't become perfected until we attain to illumination. And when we attain to illumination, all of these are spontaneously manifested. There's no work involved, there's no effort involved. There's nothing else that we could be once we attain to perfection, because in wisdom we see everything correctly. We have attained to that which was to be attained to. We have attained to that which everything in the whole universe is trying to get to, mostly unknowingly. Most people are seeking that, but they don't know that that's what they're seeking. But the person of wisdom has attained to the end and goal of all life. All existence, not just life, even mineral existence, is tending towards that. Everything is seeking freedom. The planets, the stars, everything is seeking freedom. And only in that do we find freedom. Everything is seeking love, and in that we find perfect love. Everything is seeking the infinite existence. Nobody is satisfied with the small. If you work very hard because you want money and you think money is going to make you happy, and you get to be a billionaire, then you see that there are other bigger billionaires than you. And so you work harder because you want to be the biggest billionaire. Even if you become the biggest billionaire like Jeff Bezos, is he happy? No, he's not. He's not happy. He may be happy about some things, but if you look at his life, you'll find that I'm not criticizing him. It's the human condition. You'll find that his life is full of unfulfilled desires and wants and needs for love, needs for acceptance, need for appreciation, full of needs, as is everyone. Again, I'm not picking on Jeff Bezos. I'm pointing him out because he's supposed to be the richest man in the world right now. And during the pandemic itself, he's made, I've seen different reports. Some say $20 billion, some say $40 billion. But when you get into 20 or 40 billion more dollars that you made just during these 4 months of the pandemic, then what does it matter? 20 or 40, what's the difference when you're counting billions? So is he happy? No. It's because we're all seeking the infinite. So can we be happy with being the richest person in the world? No. Can we be happy by having the most possessions? No. Can we be happy by having the most power, being the president of the most powerful country in the world, or being a king or a queen of a vast empire? Can we be happy? No, we can't. We'll still be unsatisfied. And so, nalpe sukhamasti, there is, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, there is no happiness in the small. Bhumaiva sukham. Happiness is only in the infinite, only in the vast. And so a person who has attained to self-knowledge, they are completely fulfilled. And so all of these qualities are spontaneously manifested. So one last thing let me say, and if any of you have questions, write them in now, and Suren will bring them to me after I give announcements. So don't wait till the end, because by the end it'll be too late. We will have come to the end of the class. So if you have questions, if you don't, that's fine. You don't have to come up with questions. But one last thing let me say on this, and that is that all human values are connected to spiritual values. Outside of spirituality, there are no human values. Now, that might be a strong statement, and it may, many people will disagree with it. A majority of people will disagree with it. But I still will maintain that all human values are tied to spiritual values, that everything that we value as human beings, the higher values. I'm not talking about valuing the best restaurant in town and things like that. No, I'm talking about all higher human values, the things that we look on as human virtues. Those are spiritual values because they are found manifested spontaneously in illumination. That's where they come from. And that's why we value them. We value them because they are rooted in spiritual reality. And so that's why when people would see Swami Vivekananda, when he came here to America, and people would meet him, they would be completely awestruck by him because in him they saw fulfilled a human aspiration. Those at least who were sensitive enough to see what they were seeing, to recognize what they were seeing. So all human values come from spiritual values. So with that, I will close. We'll start next time on verse 12. And let me give announcements, and then if there are any questions, I will answer those. So for announcements, they're very simple. On Thursday, we will have the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna class at 11 o'clock in the morning. On Sunday, I will speak on the series small Vedantic texts. And for Sunday, I am taking the Shiksha Ashtakam, that is 8 verses of instruction of Sri Chaitanya. That is the great saint of Bengal who is recognized as an incarnation of God. So he was not just a saint, but an incarnation of God. And then next Tuesday, we will continue this class. But our classes will continue till the end of July. So we have one more Gita class. But this Sunday is the last Sunday lecture of July. And so in August, we will take a break. August, the classes and lectures will be suspended and we'll begin again at the beginning of September. So is there anything, Surenji? Thank you. Okay, Maharaj, could you kindly repeat the explanation of the last Shila, something, a shloka. Oh, okay, there you corrected it. Shloka once more. Yes, the last shloka. Let me get it in front of me again. Number 11, the steadfastness in the knowledge concerning the self. That is the first thing that is said, steadfastness in the knowledge concerning the self. So the person of wisdom is steadfast in knowledge of the self because they have attained to it. And so that is, of course, obvious. Contemplation on the purpose of the experience of reality. So that is his interpretation, Madhusudana, that tattva jnanartha darshanam means contemplation on the purpose of the experience of reality. I don't personally like that interpretation of the phrase because a person of the highest wisdom doesn't sit around thinking about trying to figure out the purpose of the experience of reality. So what I would say that one means is that one who is fully aware, darshana, one who has the insight into the tattva jnana artha, the value of or the purpose of the knowledge of reality. That is, they're fully aware of the purpose of the knowledge of reality because that is what they have worked to attain and that is what they have attained. And then etad jnanam iti proktam ajnanam tad yad ato nyatha. So this, all of these qualities mentioned from verse 7 to verse 11, all of these qualities are what are known as knowledge. So, of course, that we have to understand that implied in that is that these qualities are the qualities of a person who has attained to that knowledge. So it's not that these qualities are knowledge, of course, but these are the qualities manifested in one who has knowledge. And that ignorance is the opposite of this. Ignorance is qualified by the lack of these qualities, the opposite qualities from those that are named. And then Subhash, Vivikta Desha Sevitvam. Does that mean going into solitude that Thakur advises? Yes. Jana Samsari, Arati Jana Samsari. Does that mean going into solitude that Thakur advises? Or Vivikta Desha Sevitvam? Yes. Vivikta Desha Sevitvam means going into solitude as Sri Ramakrishna. For us, it means going into solitude as Thakur, as Sri Ramakrishna advised. So as a practice, yes, for us, that's what it means, going to a solitary place to learn to think about God without distraction. And for the person of attainment, it means that they have no need for being in the midst of people. Of course, they've attained to a state where whether they're in the midst of people or not, they're in the same state. But they don't seek out human company because they're lonely or whatever. And then Jack, can one aspire for higher ambitions of wealth and also try to be happy? Does that work? Yes. In fact, in the Hindu tradition, it's considered that there are four purusharthas, four goals of life, and that all four are legitimate. And so those are dharma, that is righteousness, right, correct action, correct living, living in tune with the moral nature of the universe. And then artha and kama, that is legitimate possession, accumulation of wealth, and sense desire. All of those are considered to be legitimate human aims. The people come into life with desire. For people desire sense pleasure and they desire property. And if those are acquired in a way which is not contradicted by dharma, but that is by the moral nature of the universe, then they won't lead you astray. You will get some satisfaction from that, and then eventually you will find that I want something even bigger. I want moksha. I want liberation. And so, in the Hindu tradition, there are two paths in regards to this. There's and again, excuse this, all of the Sanskrit terms, but I'll say the Sanskrit terms and then explain them. Pravritti marga and nivritti marga. Pravritti marga means the outward going path. So for most religious people, what to speak of ordinary people are all on the outward going path. That is, they want the world, they want to experience the world. But even among religious people, most are on pravritti marga. That is, they want the world, they want to experience the world, they want to engage with the world. They want to have nice things. They want to acquire wealth. They want to have sense enjoyment. They want to go to nice restaurants, have good food, and so forth. In Hinduism, it's considered that there's nothing wrong with that. And that if you deny people the opportunity for that, then you are restricting their growth, because most people have a need for that, and they have to go through that before they can come to the point where they are satisfied with the attainment of reality. And so the attainment of wealth, eventually a person will find that, yes, they will get some satisfaction from it, but they'll find that it's not enough. I want something more. And then the desire for spirituality, irregardless of wealth, comes. But until that comes, we can't just say, well, I'm going to renounce the desire for this sense enjoyment and for wealth, because the desire is there. So it's better to fulfill our desires in a legitimate way, that is, in a moral way. And then once we have fulfilled those desires, then the mind will be satisfied and will want to go on to wholeheartedly for something higher. So even as we're pursuing those ends of possession and sense enjoyment, if we have in mind that we're also going towards God, then that will direct our aim towards possession and sense enjoyment in a moral way, so that it doesn't impede our further growth. And eventually we'll be able to go straight towards liberation. So, okay, so we'll stop here. And let me give a closing chant. And next time we will continue. So, Om Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutastun Vandi Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapada Kramopanishadair Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyandam Navidu Sura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha. We bow to that Supreme Being, whom Brahma and other gods praise with divine hymns, whose glories the singers of the Sama hymns sing through the Vedas and the Upanishads, whom the yogis see with their mind absorbed in that through meditation, and whose end or beginning neither the gods nor the asuras know. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.